but how did you accept Islam? How did you find Islam? And what's your kind of background, where you're from? And, you know, I know you're a Christian, but what type of church were you in?
So, man, I was raised Methodist, and Methodist is a denomination from the Protestant and closer to Lutheran denominations, because from the Protestants, you have the main branch off that started from what you call Catholicism, which they were the protesters, came Protestant, and then the actual name Protestant, the capital P, and then you had Lutheran, and from the Methodist, and so on and so forth. So I was raised Methodist, but as time went on, you know, we went through many churches. We tried out many different churches. My parents hated Baptist because, you know, they didn't. I guess they weren't as fun, or at least they did do all the stuff. But if you're a Baptist, you're not supposed to drink. But all the Baptists we knew, they would still like sneak beers and stuff. And so I forget, we used to have a name for them. But I just after high school, I decided, you know what, I'm going to start seeking the truth, because I had gotten in trouble with, you know, with a few things, and I just decided, you know what, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone, go to because I was going to Texas A&M University, and I'm gonna kind of see what the truth is, which version of Christianity is the right one. So for me, that was my first seeking. After that, it was several years later that I went through the Bible again after getting in more trouble with the law. And I decided that, you know, just come to myself, no doubt, not meeting any Muslims, nothing. I decided, you know what? Jesus is not God. I just, when I was reading it, especially reading things like Hosea 11:9, you know, where it says, where I will not devastate and come against Ephraim again. For I am God and not a man. Because a lot of people want to quote Numbers 23:19, and that also did it for me as well. But people would say, oh, this means that God is not a man that he should lie. Well, Jesus didn't lie, so therefore he still can be the Son of Man and God. Okay, and not God, you know, and so on and so forth. They played the gymnastics with it. So when I saw Hosea 11:9, it just says God is not a man, period. So that was one of the main things that did it for me. And so for 4 years, I went on just being a monotheistic Christian, all on my own, right? And so I was no longer using the rose-colored glasses of Trinitarianism to read into the Bible when I would read it. So whenever I would read things like the Father and I are one, whoever has seen me has seen the Father, I was now, because I'd come step back from an objective standpoint, I saw these things as metaphorical, like, oh, if you've seen Jesus, then you've seen the will of the Father. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I was moving and progressing forward. And it wasn't until one day when I, you know, was going through a lot, that, you know, I just, you know, I did this story with Eddie. May Allah, you know, be pleased with him and bless him. But I was, you know, going through a really rough day one day, and I opened up my Bible, and I immediately opened to the page where Jesus prostrated in the garden. And I remembered what my pastor Randy said, and he said a couple weeks before, you know, we don't, and this is out of nowhere. He said, we don't put our heads on the ground like them Muslims. He said, we have honor. He said, don't humiliate yourself. It would be one thing if you said, don't humble yourself. He said, don't humiliate yourself and put your head on the ground like the Muslims. We get on our knees and we ask for God like this. And I remembered that when I read this verse, and it never struck me before. I never really paid attention to it. But I read this verse and I was like, SubhanAllah, Jesus did this. And I claim to follow Jesus. I don't worship him. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do what Jesus did and then disobey the preacher, right? I don't care what he says. And I put my head on the ground. Long story short, I asked for guidance. God guided me. I saw some things. You know, you can watch the other videos to get the whole story. But I picked up a Quran. I said, if this is true, I'm going to go find out for myself. I'm not just going to take it, because the dream, I could tell that I felt like it was true. But at the end of the day, we don't base our salvation on dreams, because a Christian, I knew this at the same time. I knew Christians who had said, I've seen Jesus, I see the Holy Spirit. And now, therefore, I'm reborn. And I'm, you know, even they get stronger in their shirk, in their Trinitarianism. And so I said, okay, if this is true, the evidence is going to back it up. So I had a Quran on my shelf because I had a lot of books on my wall in my house. I took off the Quran. I was like, I'm going to start reading this. I'd read all these other books. Let's do the Quran. As soon as I opened to that first page, John, wallahi, I started crying tears like I never cried before. And I couldn't stop crying. And I kept going page after page. I'd open up to another section. And I was just so flooded with these emotions of, oh my God, I can't believe nobody has ever shown me this before. I'm so angry. How could the church have hidden this from us? How come, they taught everything just made sense. I was like, this is so simple. Worship one God, believe in all the prophets. There's paradise, hellfire. You choose where you want to go. End of story. It's so easy. And I was like, this is what I am. This is what I want to be. But I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know there was a such thing as a shahada or whatever. And that came a week later after asking a few people, kind of digging around, watching some videos. And Miskeen, mashallah, may Allah bless them, though. The brothers who I talked to about this, they're like, yes, you have to give shahada in the masjid on Friday. And I even drove all the way to Houston that Wednesday to go meet them. May Allah bless them. I'm sure they were overwhelmed because I was like saying a lot of things, and I'm sure as a new Muslim, like everything was. I probably sounded like maybe crazy to them too, anyway. But they're like, yeah, just go give shahada on Friday in the masjid instead of right there. But alhamdulillah, it is what it is. And then when I did, Sheikh Kinad al-Mekki was the one giving the khutbah, and so when he had me say it. Wallahi, John, that feeling that I got the week before, because it was a Friday when I had my dream when I was in school.
Were you his first 1 minute shahada then?
That's one, yeah, mashallah. I was less than a 1 minute shahada. I stood up, it's like 30 seconds shahada, mashallah. Mashallah.
So like you said, you was kind of monotheistic before you actually found Islam. You'd already come to this conclusion about believing in one God and that Jesus is not a part of God. You worship God alone, the creator. Did you go to any Unitarian churches, or was you kind of still, was you still going to the Trinitarian community, but this was like a private belief?
The Unitarian churches today, they're called Unitarian Universalist churches, and they're not Unitarian in the sense of the heretical Unitarian sects that came in the beginning of Christianity. So like if you go to any Unitarian church today, they practice what we would call, not pantheism, but it's like the Abrahamic faith idea. What's that called? Starts with P. I think, but basically they believe that as long as you believe in God, as long as you do good, you'll go to paradise, right? And I was like, okay, I don't agree with that. I believe that there is one path, there's one way, there's one truth. And so I would just still go to church though. One, because it was easy. And two, even though I was a Unitarian, like I committed, I worked on the weekdays. I would go and party on the weekend. And then Sunday came around, I'd feel really guilty about my sins. So I had to go somewhere. So the only thing I knew that was in my area was the church. And so I watched The Passion of the Christ, which was done by Mel Gibson. That whole movie was done in Aramaic. He even went to Syria and learned Aramaic, and he got Aramaic speaking people so that he could get all of the lyrics, all of the words for that entire movie done in Aramaic properly. And if you look in that movie, Jesus calls upon Allah by two different names, by Ilah and Allah.
That movie is that you're saying, is that movie done in Aramaic? I didn't know that. I've not seen it.
Yes.
It's not done in English.
No, it's subtitled. The whole movie is subtitled.
Subhanallah, they're really trying to bring some type of authenticity to the story, right? Wow.
Mel Gibson, he's hardcore Christian, mashallah. Well, not mashallah, but he's hardcore Christian. And so whenever I would go to church, whenever they would say, put their hands up and they say, in Jesus' name we pray, Ameen, or Amen. Yeah, they don't say Ameen. They say Amen. I would, under my breath, I would say, in Allah's name. I mean, I wouldn't call upon Jesus anymore as a Christian. Like, I would still go to church, but I was like, if I call upon Jesus, this is like the biggest of sins. Like, subhanallah. Like,
Oh,
this is ajib. Now that I think back about it, like, I'm just getting some of these memories now, mashallah. So, and the reason why I said it under my breath was because in Christianity, if you go to the pastor, you say, hey, look, I want to become an atheist. He will invite you over for dinner and he'll say, hey, come on, let's talk about it. And, tell me all about it. And they'll try to help you out. They'll do the best that they can. However, if you go to the pastor and you say, look, I'm still a Christian. I love Jesus, but I don't believe in the Trinity. They don't speak to you. You're out the door.
wow.
Like, you have nothing to do with us. This is the greatest sin that you could do. It's worse than being an atheist, at least the way they treat it. And so I kept it to myself. I was like, no one's going to accept it as it is. And I recognized it. And so I kept it to myself. I was a closet Unitarian for 4 years until Allah guided me that day, January 17th, 2014.